All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time of day it is for you. We are going to get started in just a couple minutes. Welcome to 2023 Planning, how to navigate uncertainty and plan for growth. We'll get started in a few minutes, and it's good to see people joining. Excited to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Give people an opportunity to join up. There we go. There's a good group of people coming in. Awesome, awesome. Perfect, perfect. Good morning, Alan, or good afternoon, Alan. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. Jennifer's ready. Danielle's ready. We are ready to roll.
I just need a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right, I will go through the welcome for the people that are here. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Raj Kapoor. I'm the founder and CEO of And Marketing, and I am super excited to have everybody on for 2023 planning, how to navigate uncertainty and plan for growth. Couple of ground rules before we jump in and get started. I'm super excited to introduce my guests, but I'll go through a couple of ground rules first. Number one, this is not your everyday webinar. We are highly interactive. So if you think we're going to throw a bunch of slides at you and read them to you, you're in the wrong place. So I always encourage lots of questions. Our three panelists here today have decades of experience leading marketing teams and other parts of businesses. And so we want to tap into them as much as possible. So if anybody has any questions, always feel free to throw them in the Q&A bar that you should see in front of you. And you should also see a chat. So either one of those work. We prefer the Q&A bar because that allows us to keep track of it. I'll be the moderator and the facilitator, and we can go from there. So I'll go ahead and start introducing the panelists. Again, my name is Raj Kapoor. I'm the founder and CEO of And Marketing. Started this business about 5.5 years ago. Preceding that, I have about 20 years of sales, marketing, and strategy experience, mostly with Fortune 100 companies. And now we work mostly at And Marketing with lower middle market types of companies. And let's just go left to right here, and I'll allow Jennifer to introduce herself. Jennifer Garcia, you want to talk a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jennifer Garcia. I have been working with Red Bamboo Marketing for over 10 years. We're a marketing strategy and planning and content agency. My background is mostly in B2B tech, and most recently with a SaaS business as well. Big growing business.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing your expertise today, Jennifer. Danielle Canton, you want to go next? Oh, you might be on mute, Danielle.
Hey, sorry about that. I'm founder of Creating Cloud9, and I basically help companies from everything from strategy to creative execution and implementation, and a really heavy background in creative, which is super fun.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Can't wait to dig in, Danielle. And last but certainly not least, Alan Gonsenhauser. Alan, you want to give a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. Good afternoon. Good thing I got my video working. So I'm Alan Gunsenhauser from Demand Revenue. I'm in Massachusetts. I've been Chief Marketing Officer and General Manager for a bunch of companies, and was an analyst, a CMO analyst with Serious Decisions in Forrester. And now I'm an interim CMO for different companies. Nice to meet you all. Look forward to the discussion today.
Absolutely. Awesome. Great. So as you guys have questions, again, reminder, throw them in the Q&A chat. I'll monitor that. So just as a little bit of background, at And Marketing, we have a fractional CMO bench of about 25 awesome fractional CMOs. 3 of them were gracious enough to join us with their expertise here today. And so let's jump in a little bit to who is And Marketing. So And Marketing, we are an outsourced marketing department for growing companies. So we do really 4 things, and I'll focus on the first one for most of the webinar. But the 4 things we do is marketing strategy and fractional CMOs. The second one is business intelligence and analytics. So we're deep into analytics and SEO and search and those types of things. We do a lot of storytelling and branding, and we do a lot of planning and execution in our business, mostly focused on digital marketing, but a whole wide variety of different things like that. A little bit more about our fractional CMO offering, and I'm just going to drop in a link to the fractional CMO page if you'd like to learn more. But basically, the way that our process works is for people who are interested in a fractional CMO service, we take some time to learn your business and understand what your needs are. And if you do need a fractional CMO, which would insinuate that you have the need to accelerate the growth trajectory of your business, but you may not have the budget to take on a full-time senior level marketing person. That's where a fractional CMO might come into play. So we take a little time, learn your business, understand the intricacies, understand what's important to you. Then we go to our bench of 25 fractional CMOs, and we see the people who match the industry, maybe the geography, the size of company, the stage that you're in, and all of those dynamics. And then we go through a pairing process, and we'll bring back 3 or 4 candidates from our bench who might be interested. You get to talk to them, and then we go through the pairing process from there. So that's how our fractional CMO offering works. And again, I sent a link in the chat if anybody wants to learn anything more about that. So let's jump into the meat of the discussion today. So we're basing a lot of the insights today on an informal survey that we ran against our 25 fractional CMOs and group of 100 plus partners. All of the numeric data you have here is based on about a dozen responses. I think our total response rate is about 13, but we conducted a bunch of additional qualitative interviews to that. So the numeric information is that limited set, but we also brought in a lot of qualitative information. And then Danielle, Jennifer, and Alan are going to go through a little bit of their insights about what they do in each of these scenarios. The good news or the bad news is that we saw a lot of common responses. So some of the challenges that our bench of fractional CMOs, our CEOs, and then most likely you are facing are going to be the same. I'll say that 2023 is sure to be a very challenging year. We say that every year now, right? 2020 was the most challenging year we've probably all ever experienced. And then it was followed by 2001, which was also extremely challenging. But what's happening right now in the macroeconomic markets that are facing small, medium, and middle market businesses is really unprecedented with inflation rates and uncertainty and things like that. So those are the major themes. And so let's jump into a little bit of those findings. And Danielle, Jennifer, and Alan, I'll ask you to jump in anytime and add any commentary or anything like that from what you're seeing in your experiences. And then we'll do a little bit of a discussion on each of these big topics. Okay. So the high level findings that we found are that most importantly, staffing, inflation, and changing strategy are by far the most common responses. So more than 60% of our respondents mentioned that they specifically had challenges in those 3 areas. So we're going to spend a lot of time on those 3. Data came up repeatedly. So not having enough data or not being able to inform key decisions with data was also a very common challenge. Almost about half of our respondents said that. Number 3 was maintaining revenue. And so specifically changes in privacy settings, changes in an evolving landscape, given uncertainty, maintaining a revenue trajectory also came up as a very common challenge. And then last but not least, it goes back to the very basics of branding, connecting with your audience and differentiating your brand. We found a lot of common themes from our respondents talking about information overload, how decision makers are evolving and things like that. So these are the themes that we're going to spend the next half an hour or so talking through. And I just welcome any questions or comments, and I'll go through those as we go through the content. Danielle, Jennifer, Alan, anything to add at a super high level about what you guys are seeing in the marketplace? Anything missing from these findings or anything you want to highlight?
You know, get into some more comments when you get into the details, Raj. But I think you know, if you look at the environment and where we are, it reinforces the outsourcing or fractional model, not just for CMOs, but for, you know, acquiring skills without building an overhead infrastructure, which is kind of the value proposition for outsourcing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That tees up the staffing and talent challenge extremely well. So 85% of our respondents, so like almost everybody, by far number 1 of any response, said that it talked about how difficult it is to retain good talent, about how flexibility is important from 2 perspectives. So we've read a lot about how flexibility is important for an employee, but it's also really important when you're leading a company to be able to have a flexible workforce, as you just talked about a moment ago, Alan. And then the third is having deep technical skills, especially in the marketing department. It is almost impossible to find today. Those are the 3 of our biggest findings. So remind me, was it Danielle or Jennifer? You guys want to jump in with one of your examples here?
Yeah, I'll kick it off and then I'll pass it over to you, Danielle. A couple of things that really struck me about this is when I started thinking about the challenges I've had with staffing and growing. Like I mentioned before, I came from a high growth industry. A SaaS business was my last role, or big customer there. And really what what I think is a good way to handle this, especially as we move into next year, is really start to look at sharing resources. So one thing is start to reach across the aisles for some of that technical skill set that you may need. So in marketing, for example, we're growing out marketing operations a lot in most organizations, especially in the small, medium-sized, mid-market, where you didn't have a dedicated marketing operations person before, or you may have had somebody that was managing your email marketing, for example, or your marketing automation platform. But now, with the onset of all the MarTech and really marketing now being responsible for all the analytics, budgeting, etc., all the budget creation management, it's good to reach across the aisle and see if you can't get the most of another employee that's working in accounting, for example, or maybe working in your IT or tech department, where you can really reach across and share that resource. So that really helps as we move into 2023. That was one thing I thought. And the other thing is really take a look at when you are interviewing, not turning away candidates that maybe what you may think are overqualified for a role. So looking at those seasoned and candidates maybe from the enterprise space that are looking to work for a smaller, more nimble company is always a good thing to do, because I think like a lot of us, I mean, you go through your career and there's certain things and not everybody has the same goal, right? Not everybody wants to move from a small to a medium to a large or an enterprise space. Not everybody wants to move with their title and change titles and that kind of thing. And everybody has different reasons for taking jobs and taking their next step in their career. So I think being really open to that and not thinking of somebody with a certain kind of experience may require, high paycheck along with that. So it's a lot of choice out there for employees also. And the final thing is I watched, I don't know if anybody else on the panel watched yesterday. I'm a fan of Patrick Lencioni, and he had his Working Genius book launch yesterday. So it's the 6 types of, working genius. And it really talks about assessing the team that you have. So yes, I know staffing is important and we're growing our teams, but really looking at, there's lots of different ways to assess your staff with Myers-Briggs and all kinds of things. But if you really look at the Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni, I really think it's going to be valuable as you move into 2023.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually launch, I forgot to do this, but it's a perfect time to do it. I'm going to launch our first poll. So we have a couple of polls that go through here. So I'd love everybody to take a minute and answer. Speaking of staffing, how many people are in your company's marketing department? That also helps us kind of go through and figure out how big some of the companies are, so how little they are. It's very surprising to me, and I say this every time that we do a webinar, is that the size of the company and the size of the marketing department often don't correlate. We'll have companies that we work with that are 25, 50, or even more $1 million, and they have 0, 1, or 2 people in their marketing department. And then we'll have other companies that are much smaller that have half a dozen people in their marketing department or even more. And I know everybody on this panel has worked at a lot of different companies, and we've worked and led some of these large marketing departments as well. So it looks like through the responses that we're getting on the survey, most people are in the 2 to 10 range, and a couple people have very small marketing departments. So I think that's a good start. I'll close that in a second, and I'll invite Danielle or Alan, anything to add to what Jennifer talked about when it comes to staffing and talent?
Yeah, definitely. Working Genius is funny because Jennifer, I just did that with a previous company I worked with, and I'm Wonder. I'm high on Wonder. But it's really awesome. It's affordable, a cool survey you can take, and it really helps you dial in on whatever the size of your team to really make sure that people are in spots that they thrive in, which helps with staffing and retention and keeping talent. So I love that idea. And then I'm going to go back to something else you said, Jennifer, which is reaching across the aisle to share resources. And I would take that even a step further. One of the biggest things I'm hearing right now is silos. You can't have them. You cannot succeed if you're siloed. And I think, Raj, you did another webinar recently that was pretty brilliant. And you reinforced that between marketing and data and finance, operations. If you guys aren't all talking, and if we're talking about smaller departments here, it could be a small number of people wearing many hats. but you really have to make sure that everybody's talking, because if marketing or sales is out there doing one thing, what's operations delivering on the back end? So reaching across the aisle to make sure that those collaborations are happening and brainstorming together. I will share a story with one of the things I love about working with and marketing and being exposed to so many other CMOs is the sharing of resources. So one of the solutions when it comes to staffing and talent is really diving into communication solutions. And there's one particular example I'll share, and I can't share the name of the company, but right now they're in senior living, and they are, if you know anything about senior living, it's occupancy rates. It's driven by occupancy rates, and they are at 100% with a paid waiting list. And they've been doing specific training and communication solutions that has allowed them to actually pull back on the training because their retention is so good.
Wow.
So think
That's
about
tremendous.
all of those shared resources that as you're out there meeting people and talking to people, there are solutions out there that can really help you.
No, that's great. That's great. All right, let's go on to the next one. Inflation and uncertainty. So it wasn't number one, which I expected it to be number one, but through the qualitative survey, that was clearly a huge concern. Every CEO I talk to is talking about what is going to happen next year. We don't know. And they're talking about costs. We kind of lumped the two of those together. It's very hard. We hear from people that it's hard to justify making big investments, especially in marketing, given the uncertainty. Shifting from a growth mindset to a profitability or a survival mindset is extremely common. Now, there's a lot of good reasons why you may or may not want to do that. Costs are increasing, pressure is on to reduce overhead. There's a lot of those kinds of pressures coming on. So I think, Danielle, you want to jump in on this one, and then maybe Alan, you can go second on kind of your comments on how to combat uncertainty and facing inflation when you're leading a marketing department.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm actually attending this amazing conference right now with, I think there's about 5,000 people there. It happens every year for marketing. And there was a in-depth presentation on inflation and how to manage it. The number one direction is to look at pricing. So you're going to increase your pricing, and most people hesitate to do that. And most people aren't out there testing pricing. So just a little bit of a price hike can actually cover any additional costs without the customer actually feeling the hit. So actually digging in, doing that math to figure out where that sweet spot is with a price increase is definitely something to look at. Also assessing your value proposition and how you might package your pricing. To really deliver, you always want to be delivering that value, but it's a different mindset and a different way of looking at what you're offering. So those were two key takeaways on how to tackle the inflation piece.
Yeah, Danielle, that's awesome. The pricing piece, I am shocked at how, first of all, how few people correlate pricing challenges in this middle market with the marketing department. But at the end of the day, you have to understand your price elasticity. That's a customer problem. It's certainly one of the P's, as we all learned in school and that sort of thing. Alan or Jennifer, anything to add in terms of uncertainty and inflation?
Yeah, and maybe if you switch to the next one on strategy shifts, because that's related to this one, Raj.
Absolutely.
I have a few comments. Obviously, a lot of companies are going to be thinking to go from growth to operational excellence. So marketing operations is even more important these days. And if you go at the next slide on strategy shifts, which is related to this one, teams are doing too much doing and not spending enough time on strategy. That's a real problem. There's a really good article that was just in the Wall Street Journal, and it's called Why Bosses Should Ask Employees to Do Less, Not More by Robert Sultan. And, really focusing on the big rocks, especially now. A lot of companies are just piling more and more things on. I've seen a lot of ways that marketing groups struggle with that. And one of the things that came up earlier is alignment between sales, marketing, and product. When I was at Serious Decisions, we did a lot of research and found that companies that were well aligned and stayed aligned grew 19% faster and were 15% more profitable. So the real economic benefits of alignment. The other thing I see a lot of waste in marketing organizations is a lot of marketing organizations are plagued with random acts of marketing. And when you think about campaigns and how you structure campaigns. If you structure campaigns, so instead of pushing all your products out separately, you start with the audience and what their pain points are. And then you organize the different programs you have in campaigns into the model I'm familiar with, 4 categories. So all of your reputation programs to seed demand early, then all of your demand programs, whether it's new logos or upsell, cross-sell, your customer engagement programs to drive retention and advocacy, and then your sales and customer service enablement programs. And if you, and then you have a revenue target or a bookings target, if you organize things that way and you spend most of your budget on revenue generating campaigns, you'll be more productive, operationally efficient, you'll grow faster, and drive more profitability. So I know that was a lot, but
no, it's good. It's good. It's great. So I just did a strategy session with a client, and this spending too much time doing and not enough time on strategy. I always start my planning and strategy sessions with a slide with an old Russian proverb that says, "He who chases 2 rabbits catches none." Right.
yeah,
And so
less is more.
less is more. And I love the idea you had. I once had a boss at one of my old jobs that looked at my priority list, and he said, what would happen if you didn't work on 4 through 8 of what your priority list was?
Exactly. I'm doing that now with a marketing team where they're
Yeah.
just piling stuff on, and people feel overworked and overburdened, and they're spending a lot of time on tactics and not enough on strategy, and
Yeah.
it's real, that you can really do more with less.
That sound, yeah. Danielle, please jump in.
Yeah, I loved what you said about alignment. I think that is so key. There's a guy, Casey Jackson. He's out there training people on motivational interviewing. And it's all about really aligning with your culture and your values so that you can ladder up. He calls it Focus Mountain, and making sure that no matter who you are on the team, you're really dialing in and always getting to those higher values, which keeps you away from doing the random acts of marketing. That is
So I got a good one for you, Danielle. So here's the question, and maybe I'll put you on the spot. So what do I do if my CEO won't make time for strategy? That's our first question. And Danielle, you're in the hot seat.
Oh, I love it.
I
love it. So I think one of the options is to actually have a conversation with him or her, and ask, what's going on? What are your thoughts around strategy? So really kind of stepping into his or her shoes, to find out what it is about strategy and maybe what's keeping them from dialing in on that.
Yeah, that's a great one. Any other advice, Jennifer or Alan?
I mean, the one thing with the strategy shifts really is one of the things, yes, it's strategy, but the point about like not doing too much. And I know you mentioned this on your last webinar, but I really think it's important. And as I mentioned earlier, my background is with content also, is we're very busy just producing, but we're still not, after all these years, rolling out, content effectively. Like we're doing a lot of, let's keep developing more and more and more, but we're not really taking the time to, get out there and promote and market the great content that we have, or get it across all forums and with different people, and network it and really get the most of the things that you're doing. And I feel that goes the same even for things like technology. I know I'm jumping around a little, but we're implementing, there's so much MarTech and from all sizes of businesses, and the SaaS software providers will kill me, but we're not getting enough out of what the systems we have in place and what they're doing. So as we move into like uncharted waters in 2023, is really to think about and look at those investments again and see what we're doing to use them. What's your strategy for this piece of software? Do you have the processes built to even use it before you invest in it? So making smart decisions too before jumping into anything.
I think one of the number one things we have helped companies do and do regularly is when you look at a marketing technology stack, it is usually brought together by duct tape and bandages, right? Yeah. Because as a company grows and scales, you sort of grab all of these software for whatever you need in the moment. But it's very good advice to take a time out, stop the noise, and actually look at what you're using and how it all works together. You can, number one, increase your effectiveness dramatically. And number two, if you're in a cost saving mode, you can usually turn certain things off and save money. And these are these kinds of things that eat away at a business's bottom line when you have things that people just aren't using. I'm sorry, Alan, did you have to add there? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on your first point in content, that's a really important one. One of the most productive things a marketing organization can do, and I've done this a few times, is to do a content audit. And when you do a content audit, what you'll probably find is you'll throw away 70% of your content. And you'll see what's really being used and what's being not used and where the holes are. And you can save millions of dollars.
After crying for a little bit.
What's that?
After crying for a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a very productive exercise. It really helps you not only save money, your CFO will love it, but it helps you become more aligned with sales and really understand, where the important content is and, where the holes are.
Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to say, Alan, bringing it back to what you mentioned in the beginning is about the importance of outsourcing. And I think I want to go back to that one question, which was awesome. What if your CEO is not into strategy? I think sometimes people shy away from what they may not know or feel comfortable doing. So understanding that there's tons of resources out there, that it actually doesn't have to be you that implements the strategy or drives it. Like, you have people and things to help you. That's another little tip for the CEO.
First step is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Get outside help. Those are all very viable options for, I think in my experience, there's 2 or 3 different types of businesses that have grown and scaled to be reasonably successful, and then they hit a plateau. When you might face a CEO who isn't willing to stop and look at strategy, it's probably because, again, he or she is so experienced being a technician, like they're the technology expert, or they're a really good salesperson, or they're really good at one thing, which makes him or her a great leader. But when you hit that plateau, it's being able to look outside your tunnel vision to be able to look at what else might be out there. So those are all great pieces of advice. Moving on to the 4th topic is big data, right? So we face this all the time. And you guys referenced a previous webinar we did. So Paul Ferguson, he runs our business intelligence and analytics practice, which is all about big data. And he's smiling and he doesn't know why now because we're talking about data. But it was alarming that 50% of respondents did say managing data was a challenge. And there's too much disparate data to sift through and connect. There's not enough data. There's not enough quality data. Gathering insights to make decisions can feel overwhelming. I remember as a junior level analyst, when I was a consultant, one of the biggest challenges we had was turning really good data into really tangible insights. That's a really difficult process that not a lot of companies can actually go through. How to integrate your many systems to gain real value from data. Those are very practical reasons why it doesn't really work. So any questions or comments from our panel about big data and its use?
I would just say that if you look at the percent of people that come to your website that fill out a form, it's about 3%. And then you've got, so 97% of the people that come to your website will never fill out a form, ever, period. And, you've got bots that come to your websites, you've got students, you've got PRs and analysts, and then you have relevant anonymous visitors, and that may be 20%. So the question is, how do you find out who these relevant anonymous visitors are or what companies they come from? So when you see multiple companies crowding your website all of a sudden, I mean, the average group size, depending if you're in the enterprise, it's like 7 to 19 people. So if you can discern multiple people from the same company coming to your website, that's a buying signal. That's a really important signal. So you have to set up your systems to be able to recognize that. And that would be my one advice on data, because that could really, you can have up to 30% of the people on your website that you'd want to know about, but they're anonymous. They'll never fill out a form. So your MQLs are always going to be, and SQLs, a small percentage of the really relevant people you want to engage with.
That's very sound, very sound. Danielle or Jennifer, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, just looking at it a little bit differently is for mid-market and smaller businesses, is to look at 2 things from a marketing perspective that I think is a good place to start, because it's just data overload, just like there's content overload, just like this the respondents had mentioned. One is really your customer data. Are you going through it and do you understand who your customers even are? So you can figure out, and set the playing field or set a strategy around account-based marketing, which is really your outbound strategy, really understanding exactly who your best customers are, your big bets. And that's a pretty easy process to do, and it shouldn't be that overwhelming to do that and understand and start to build out your ideal customer profile and what it is and what that looks like. And then once you have that, from there your marketing team will know what to do, or you'll know what to do to get in front of them. but really digging into that customer data, number one, is pretty easy to do, and something every business should be doing, and doing it better probably than they're doing it. And then the other thing, just as a demand marketer and running that team for a while, is just really digging into your lead data. So the leads that are coming in, looking at what channels they're coming in, and then taking that a step further. So for example, if they're coming in from paid search, then figure out, okay, they're coming in through Google paid search, Bing paid search. What campaigns are producing the best results? What keywords are producing the best results? So really taking that and looking at through to the end, and collaborating with sales on that to make sure that you're going after the using the right channels to get the best leads. So it's fundamental and sounds elementary, but not everybody's doing it. So
I don't think it's elementary at all, Jennifer. And I'll just highlight a couple of specific things that we've done that's been really successful. So first of all, I am continually shocked at how few companies actually look at their own website data. So Alan, you're going 3 levels deeper than most companies, because many companies don't even look at their own data. They don't look at their email data. They don't look at their social data. And then they don't look at external data sources. And almost nobody looks at all of those together to find patterns across. So that to me is the lowest lying fruit that you can expect from your marketing department. The second one, and Jennifer, I'm so glad you brought up account-based marketing. It is very surprising to me how few companies that say they want to scale don't have a top 100 target list. Right? They do random acts of marketing, as Alan so well articulated it. But one of the things we'll systematically do with a client on their annual planning cycles, which is now, is actually develop a target list of 100 companies that you want to go after that fit your ideal client profile. Who are the key decision makers? How do we get there? And how do we potentially penetrate those? And to be really clear, it's not always digital marketing, right? We all love digital marketing. It's a core of how we go to market, but it could be good old-fashioned sales calls. It could be good old-fashioned direct mail. It could be LinkedIn. It could be email. It could be a whole variety of different things. And it's usually worth, if you've built that list really well, it's usually worth going through, because one success in one of those programs can usually pay for the entire program and then some.
Yes.
So those tend to be really successful programs. I've got a question coming in. I want to keep the pace here. So any advice? So another question here about senior management. Any advice on convincing senior management that in the absence of optimal actionable data, decisions guided with available data combined with experienced gut is still okay? So when do you mix hard data with gut? Who wants to grab that one?
You have to use what you have. You know, the worst thing is indecision. You know, if you wait and wait and wait to get perfect data, you know, you may miss the boat. So you have to use some judgment, use as much data as you can, and then make decisions. But the worst thing is not making decisions and being late.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Alan.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer, Alan. I think we would all share in that. You have to go sometimes, especially with small businesses. You can't wait for perfection. Otherwise, the market is going to miss you. So that's great. Thank you so much, Mark, for that question. Last but not least is a marketing topic, right? So what is changing in the world when it comes to target audiences, and branding? So I'll just go through what the survey found. So number one, personas have changed. During tough times, it is really important to align with your target customer. I cannot say that more clearly. It is a marketing fundamental, but very few companies actually do it. The second one is increasing costs. So cost per acquisition or cost per click, depending on your tactic, make it harder and harder to find new customers, especially companies that are in B2B that might use a vehicle like LinkedIn. It ends up being quite an art and a science to go find people in a more expensive environment, right? Because go back to Gary Vee. His 101 is that you have to go find the places where your audience is hanging out, where you can underprice that attention and go sort of get that click or that targeted person to visit your website or check out your content or something like that. The second part of it is about branding. So there's too much noise to stand out. So how does a company, again, a relatively small company compared to really large competitors, how do you make a memorable connection? How do you stand out in a sea of noise that exists in today's media environment? How do you create content, and how do you deal with information overload? So I'll tee that one up as a general topic for any of the fractional CMOs to kind of tackle.
I'll just comment on that, cost per acquisition. You really want to look at your lifetime value, and you want to look at, LTV to CAC. So if you're going to keep someone for 10 years, you could pay a lot of money to bring on a new logo. But it's got, from a financial standpoint, you really want to look at both sides of that equation. because increasing costs may not be a bad thing if you've got really good lifetime value.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Alan, in the SaaS world, it's all about LTV to CAC, right? Lifetime value to cost per acquisition.
And retention. And really it's all about, if you listen to Fred Reichert, who started NPS 20 years ago, he's got NPS 3.0 now. And financial results, he has a new metric he's calling earned growth. Financial results are correlated to two things: your net revenue retention, plus if you look at the new logos you get because of a promoter or a customer referral, and you can measure that and add those two things together, that's the value of your customer base. And it's more aligned with growth than looking in the rearview mirror at financial results.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense. Danielle or Jennifer, anything to add there on audience or branding?
Yeah, I can jump. Do you want to go ahead, Jennifer?
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Okay, I'll just jump in on the audience piece. And here we talk about our customer in general, but really you have multiple audiences. So tapping into all of the different audiences you might have, your customer, but also your employees, investors, anybody who might be supporting you. I like to talk about it as a golden thread. So there's a golden thread of, like, it's an energy that's going throughout all of those audiences around a particular idea. Finding what that idea is and speaking about it, in a visual language and messaging in a certain way is going to trigger all of those people and connect them. So really dialing in on that, investing, I know you mentioned a logo, Alan, but it's like investing in that brand campaign that's really going to help you message in a way that's going to move every single audience member. And it could have variations depending on who that audience is, but that creative messaging is key to really capturing their attention and motivating them to action.
I love it, Danielle. Thank you so much. That golden thread idea is really, really good. I love it.
Yeah, I'm going in the way back machine, but I was on the team that created Zoom for Mazda.
Oh, wow.
So it was like really, it goes back to that little gut question that came through, how often do you go on gut? And it's like, there was data there available, but from a creative perspective, so much of it was really gut. It was instinct. It was tapping into what is it that makes the Mazda driver unique.
Making an emotional connection.
It's the total emotional connection. Yeah. And that's when you relate that particular story to different audiences. Think about Zoom and going Zoom. Everybody can relate, right? Yeah. So as a child growing up, whether you're an investor, the buyer, the dealer. So you think about all those different audiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Danielle. Jennifer, something to add?
Yeah, just two things. One is, 100% behind the brand purpose and everything Danielle said. I think one mistake businesses make too, especially technology businesses. Our agency works a lot on new websites and rolling out new branding, and we'll sometimes transforming websites. And when we get to the website, there's been times where you'll just stare at the website and have no idea what the company does because they're trying to be too sophisticated with their branding or too creative with their branding. And at the end of the day, say what you do. If it's a lease accounting software, that's lease account. It has to be on your homepage front and center, because you'd be surprised how people miss that sometimes. That's the one thing on branding there. And then the other thing on audience is also what I've been reading about recently also is because of the uncertainty as we move into next year, is that a lot of companies are now having buying committees. They're larger than maybe they were before. So really keeping that in mind as you're out there selling and on the front lines and marketing is thinking of all the people that will be involved in the sale. So maybe there were 3 before and there could be 5 now because people are tightening their budgets and tightening their belts and trying to really be aware of how things are being spent. So just taking that extra time in the sales process to address all those issues up front with the whole buying committee and getting the consensus there. Just something to think about as we move into next year.
Great. I'm going to launch our second poll here. So this is the question that we'd like to ask you. What challenges are you experiencing as you're planning for 2023? So you can pick multiple choices here. Is it big data and decision making, as we talked about, recession concerns, staffing and talent, inflation, supply chain, or budgeting? What are your biggest challenges? So I'll leave this open for a minute or so as we go through. Anything more to add on the topic of audience and branding? I know when you bring 4 marketers together, there's a lot to say on audience and branding. So anything we may not have talked about. So we're getting a lot of answers around staffing and talent. We're getting some around recession concerns. I'll keep it open, but anything to add as people are filling out their survey?
Yeah, Raj, one thing I just wanted to add, and I think maybe some others have been reading this or experiencing it, but just that event marketing is back. Everybody knows that, but it was interesting. I was reading a lot about how, because most people are working at home with their families, with their spouse, with their roommates, whoever, the event marketing is also giving workers a chance to get away from those people for a little break. So you are seeing attendance really go up at these events. That's just something to think about as you plan and budget for next year. Don't shy away from those events. Even though they could be costly, they're worth it. They're going to get you bang for your buck next year.
That's so true, Jennifer, because that event I just mentioned, I went to, I'm actually going to, it's happening today and tomorrow as well. They get like 3,000 to 5,000 people. Last year, not so much. It was pretty thin. This time it's hopping.
Good.
They're back.
I think people are desperate to have the face-to-face contact that breaks up, that it opens everything. That's a great point. And planning a really good event takes a lot of effort and strategy and planning and things like that. Really important. So yeah, our results are staffing and talent is the #1 issue that our audience is also facing, recession concerns, and then big data and budgeting are the other 2. So thank you so much for filling those out. So as we kind of go through and start to wrap up, I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to say one final word or one final piece of advice. What I will say is anybody who is interested, we would appreciate if you gave the And Marketing LinkedIn page a follow. I'm going to throw that in the chat. Please go ahead and give us a follow. You get more great stuff, more great content, more webinars and things like that. You'll be the first to hear about it. And then you are always welcome to reach out to me individually for a free 30-minute sort of follow-up session. If you want a specific connect with Alan, Jennifer, or Danielle, please just mention that in your note and I'll connect you directly. You can have a great chat with them. They're all brilliant and very willing to help. But I'll start with, let's go alphabetically. So Danielle, last comment or suggestion from the audience as we get ready to wrap up for today.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'd like to share is just don't get trapped in fear. Don't get paralyzed. Don't get stuck in fear or concern about the uncertainty. Keep taking those action steps, and I think that leads back to strategy shifts, right? So even when COVID hit, it was amazing to get my clients not to pull back on marketing and to double down and actually thrive at a time when people weren't. So there's always a way. Don't lose sight of that.
Yeah. What's the old adage, Danielle? When there's a market downturn, whoever gains share during the market downturn tends to keep that share when the market goes up. And a lot of people think of marketing as the first thing to cut, but it's actually a really good time to double down and invest. And
I remember we had a bunch of creative messaging out there. And as soon as COVID hit, it happened to be in the home care health senior space. And we pulled it immediately, created creative that spoke directly to what people were going through, being stuck at home with the noise and the chaos. And, so it was really, really powerful. It was a lot of opportunities. So
that's excellent. That's excellent. Jennifer, you're up next.
Okay. And just touching on the staffing and resources in general, I think it's really time. I did drink the Kool-Aid yesterday with the Working Genius book launch. And I think it's important that I just came out of a business where we grew the business from like 3 to 20 marketers in 3 years. And it was a very fast pace. And I think it's time, really to look at who your team is. So yes, I know people want to add another person, but think about really shifting around who you have and what their strengths are and what they enjoy doing, because that's what the Working Genius is all about. Because when you're enjoying what you're doing, you're really in your sweet spot and you're producing. So take the time to do that.
That's great, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Absolutely a great one. And last but not least, Alan.
So love your customers, focus on your customers. It's 5 times easier to grow with your current customers than it is to always bring on new logos. And if in fact we go into a recession, your customers may need some help. And just like during COVID, those organizations that pivoted to really help their customers and understand the jobs they were trying to get done and their needs have far better retention and longevity and lifetime value and all those financial So understand the buyer and the customer's journey, understand what the post-sale customer journey looks like, how you onboard customers, how you introduce them to you, how you support them, how you are responsive quickly, make sure they keep using, your product and keep getting value from it. But that would be the most important thing I could say.
That is so well said, Alan. And I will do one last plug for our fractional CMO services. So again, Danielle, Jennifer, Alan, and 22 other fractional CMOs on And Marketing's bench are eager to talk to you. So if you're interested, click on that link or shoot me a quick email and I will connect you with the right person and we'll go from there. But Jennifer, Danielle, and Alan, I thank you so much for your time today. You guys are very generous with your time and all of your knowledge. So thank you so much. Have an awesome day. Thanks everybody for your great participation in the polls and the chat. And we hope to see you online soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good, everybody. Thank you.